remember, like Bob Clark and Doug Campbell, they actually devoted a show. What was it called? The Lives of Fletcher
Yeah, the
Prowse?
Lives of Fletcher Prouty. What a
Right.
joke.
Yeah.
What an embarrassment. I mean, those.
Everything is going to hell down here in Texas.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. This is the Triple B, Big Bad Bob, Rob, here with you. Episode number 258. Got a special guest for you today. But before we get there, let us hear a word from our most delicious of sponsors, Silk City Hot Sauce, baby. Big Bad Bob here with you for Silk City Hot Sauces. Why Silk City? Because this hot sauce comes to you directly from Patterson, New Jersey, also known as Silk City. These hot sauces are 100% natural, gluten-free, vegan, contain no chemicals, fillers, dyes, or junk. Everything is packed into recyclable glass containers because glass doesn't leach weird flavors into the product. All other hot sauces are sourced in small batches from locally bought fresh peppers. It's all about the pepper, people. I'm telling you. Your boy, Big Bad Bob, loves his food like he loves his women. Hot and spicy, but not so hot you can't eat them. So, if you love yourself some sauce and you're tired of trying to transform your bland meat into something edible, with the tip of a jar, you will transform your life forever. Head over to silkcityhotsauce.com, place an order, and upon checkout, enter the code Gunman, that's Gunman, for 20% off of your entire order. You won't regret it. Thank me later. Peace. What's up, everybody, and welcome to the show. This is your boy, the Triple B, Big Bad Bob with you, otherwise known as Rob Clark. And it is almost the 60th anniversary of the JFK assassination. And joining me today here is a very special guest. He's a friend of the show, a friend of mine, a toter of large bags of paper. And now I can call him an author, a noted author. Bart Kamp returns to the show. What's up, Bart?
Really good, Rob. Glad we can chat again. Always good fun. It's been for the last, 7, 8 years, something like that. 2016, maybe. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's been a while. Always good fun. And now this whole author thing, I hadn't planned on it at all. Well, last year in June, I've got to thank Malcolm Blunt for this, because he told me to do a book. You should do a book. And I was like, why? Oh, no, this is too good. You got to do a book. And I was like, God. And I just only finished the papers like a week or two before. And I was like, well, I'm bored with this. I want to take a break. Well, fat chance. I took a break maybe for about 2 months. And then I had to look into the fingerprints. And then I had to look into the lineups more. And I had to look up in the psych report as well. And, bits and bobs. Every time it's like when I think I'm done, there's something else coming around the corner and going, listen, if you do that, you got to make sure you got to do that as well. And I was like, so that's basically the punishment of for going into a chronology mode with this book. You can't just leave things out. I did manage to leave things out because for me, what's the merit is more like, well, where was Oswald at that time, and how did that develop, and especially during his interrogations as such. I never thought for a minute like, oh, I'm going to put this in fine detail together. Every 6 months or so, there was something new coming, or I found more material, and especially in the Blunt archives, which started with that late 2018, so 5 years ago. First with Harry Livingston stuff, I did like October till January. And then all of a sudden, I started looking at Malcolm's material, and I realized like he's got stuff that no one else has had or had access to. And, you know, he's been the guy who's been at the archives several times for prolonged periods. So I thought, okay. But the problem was that because it was so disorganized, I had to go through everything. So
Yeah,
that was a lot of work.
Good job, and you cut out a lot of fluff. I mean, otherwise it would have been, you know, 1,000 or 2,000 page book.
Yes. Well, when I did the papers, I think it came when I did the papers, I used the media and the documentation as well. So when I said something, it was right there, and that's the format I really liked. I voted against doing a book because the footnotes are pet hate of it.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah, no, but the pet hate, it was a pet hate for me going backwards and forwards in a book.
Yeah.
And I did, when I read Jim Douglas's book, you know, it's 1,200 something pages, and it's already a bastard to read that book with one hand while you lay in bed. It's too heavy for your wrist. And then you keep going backwards and forwards to the sources, and I was like, there's got to be a better way than dealing with this malarkey. So then I just basically stuck all the documentation in. And then I started linking to it because the ebook, when it became an ebook, I was like, well, I'm not going to do all the documentation, et cetera, because it turns into a huge book. So why don't I just link everything to it? So that was another job and a half, because there's about more than 1,200 links in there to either my website or the documentation or video or, you know, pictures as such. So it's a lot of work. And then for the print version, I had to take them all out again. And then I had to, and instead of doing the usual traditional route of putting footnotes in, I basically numbered everything with a link to my website called The Book, and just go there, and there's 4 chapters, and each chapter is basically related to the content, and the numbers, of course, work together.
That's a great way to do it, you know.
Yeah, I spoke to a few people, and they all said, oh, that's a great idea. And I'm going, yeah, well, you know what? These days, everyone's got a tablet or a laptop besides reading a book, or have their phone. So if they want to check something out quickly, they can just do that and keep that page bookmarked. And every time they want to see the number, all they have to do is click on the link, and it will take you to that particular document as such. So
Exactly. Now,
I didn't think it was rocket science, but I thought at the same time, I was like, not many people do this, and I think this could work well, especially because that's what the book is based on, the evidence. And, you know, I didn't put this book together the way I wanted it to put together, like, oh no, this is how it needs to be. Well, maybe some elements, but overall the story is basically being made by the material, the evidence as such, and by sticking
the
it
videos,
together.
the photos, the documents. Yeah.
That's pretty much
Now this
it.
year, Bart, we were both presenting at Lancer virtually.
Yeah.
What is your presentation going to be about this year, Lancer?
Prayer Man, only Prayer Man I'm going to talk about. So the people that were on the steps, what happened with these people, what they did, the difference between the Wiegman and the Darnell film, what Prayer Man looks like, what he does, the history of it, because there's a massive gap, 4 decades in between the whole thing. First when it was
this goes back to the 60s.
68, yeah. Richard Eastbrake, Richard Burnaby, Howard Rothman, and Harold Weisberg. Those 4 swapped letters and basically discussed a lot, and then also started talking about the man in the shadow. But But you know that I mean I like that title better than Prayer Man. But
Yeah, Stan Dane stole that, didn't he?
no, it was Sean Murphy actually who did it, who came up with that name back in '09, I think.
What was Stan Dane's books called?
That's called Prayer Man. Oh, it's a long title. And now
Something about
now you
shadow.
caught me off guard. Something
God
in the
damn.
light. Let's have a quick look. Let's just have a sneaky look.
I have it on Kindle. I'll look and you look too. We'll see who finds it first. Here we go. Out of the shadows and into the light.
That's it. Out of the shadows into the light. Prayer Man. Yeah, Stan. I mean,
Yep.
when I met up with the ROKC boys back in late 2014, early 2015, and became part of the trusted group, and then basically Stan said, "Oh, I'm going to do a book about this whole thing," and I was like, "Oh, I was thinking of doing the same thing." So, but then when Stan said, "Well, I'm going to basically focus on that thread at the Education Forum," started by Bill Kelly, Oswald leaving the TSPD. I knew right away there and then that my book was going to be different, so I wasn't worried about it. But I also knew, like, oh, well, you know what? If I'm going to do something, then I'm going to dig into the past of it before people started actually paying attention to it in those first few years of the teens, 2010 to 2013, 2014. Yeah, and then I've looked into the past, so I found out about Richard Bernabé and Richard E. Sprague, and then from there on I started looking into all the people, and then started talking to people like Linda Giovanna Zambanini with regards to recognition of people, because she was very good at that. She trawled all these high school yearbook sites for people, and then managed to find their high school yearbook photos, so that helped a lot with identifying people. And it just started to lead its life because when I did the first movie I did on YouTube back in 2015, which is still running.
Yeah.
And it's 8 years old. Yeah, that was the first time. And then I thought, oh, you know what? I need to write this down. And then I realized, like, well, and I was going to do 4 movies. And then I stepped off the whole movie thing at that time, and started to write it all down. And when I did the papers took much longer, because I started with that first one, the second floor lunchroom encounter one, 2016. And then late 2016, Christmas, I already started putting the first words down on the interrogations one. But I never expected the interrogations one. It took me like 3 to 4 years to finally finish it to a level where I went, yeah, this is pretty much it. But then at the same time, it was also big. And the interrogations
New info.
also... Yeah, there's a lot of new info in that, and also from the 3 chapters in the book, that is the biggest chapter. I think it's bigger than the first 2 combined, because there's so much info in it as such. It's just unreal. I mean, that is mainly due to Malcolm Blunt's archive.
Yeah. Let me ask you about. Let me ask you about, since we mentioned it briefly, Oswald leaving the school book depository.
Yeah.
Now it's crazy to me that of all the video and photos we have of that day and around that time, nobody caught Oswald leaving the building.
No.
And exactly. I know what Frazier says, and I know what you say in the book, that he was one of the first ones to leave.
Yeah.
If you could get into that just a little bit and kind of clarify why you think Oswald was one of the first ones to get the hell out of there.
Okay, so the Warren Commission basically puts the story together that Oswald was encountered in the second floor lunchroom, and then makes his way through the offices, down the stairs, going to the front, and then leave the front. Well, there's just a massive problem with that, because nobody saw him leaving. Nobody sees him guzzling that coke down before he leaves. Nobody sees him getting his jacket and then leave and so forth. The whole
Did Fraser
2.5
tell
minutes
the
thing.
Warren Commission that he saw him? Did Fraser tell the
Yeah, but
Warren
he saw
Commission
him.
that he saw Oswald leave?
Yeah, I saw him leave somewhere else though, from the back, as far as I can recall.
He told him from the back to the Warren
Yeah,
Commission.
he left. Yeah, he left from the back, if I'm not mistaken. But the thing was that even if he were that, so nobody saw him, and at the front, what did he
Yeah.
do with the coke? And then, of course, deeper investigation, I come to the conclusion with quite an amount of evidence to show that the second floor lunchroom encounter never happened. Not after the shooting. If Oswald went for lunch, that was about 12 o'clock, half an hour before the limo came past. And
Right.
people used to go to that floor to grab a drink from the machine and were not allowed to sit down there, the workers. That's another thing. It's like, some of the people even have said that for the Sixth Floor Museum interviews. Oh, I saw him sitting there. It's impossible because the second floor lunchroom was off limits to workers because they had their own little room in the back on the first floor. This was called the domino room. They were there to get a Coke and then they had to get out. And Fraser, as well, as said on a different occasion that Shelley gave them permission to check out the pretty girls upstairs. Otherwise, they were not allowed to go up there. And Roy Edward Lewis has said this as well. Said that it wasn't that because we were black. It was just like we were not allowed to be there. And you know what? It's offices. Second floor is all offices. So unless you have business there, you're not supposed to be there. And that's what Marion Baker said as well in his Warren Commission testimony. He said he had no business being there. And I thought, how do you know that? You only know that because somebody from the Texas School Book Depository told you as such.
Right.
That's right. There was a class divide in some way because accountants and managers, they were wearing jackets and shirts. And the people that worked downstairs, the laborers, were wearing T-shirts and jackets, but not like a jacket as a sports jacket or a suit jacket. No, just like a shirt or an oversized shirt, like Oswald would be wearing. And the people that would be hauling books and stuff like that would, of course, take that off and just work in a T-shirt as such. And you still have that in these days. There's big companies where workers eat separate from office staff and the directorate. That's just, I'm not a fan of it.
So these guys would collect books from all over the TSBD, right? They'd go pull their orders and bring them back down to the first floor, which was considered the shipping department, right?
Yeah.
And have their orders checked, and then they would be packaged for shipment, I'm guessing, right? All on the first floor?
Yeah. There'd be wrapping. There's some pictures at the, if you want to check out the pictures at the portal to Texas history at the University of North Texas. And they got a whole bunch of pictures made by the Warren Commission. These are like shot on 5x4 inch camera.
It's hard to put those damn pictures into context without like a full picture of the room. You know, it's like a close up of a wrapping table. Like, where the fuck is it?
I mean, I had to look that all up because they make it sound like it's a massive place. But how much is it? How big is that building? 90 feet square. 30 meters square. And in the back was basically, they had these long tables where they had a coffee making equipment as well. But at the same time, they had a roll of paper hung up by string and a ball of string. And that's basically how they used to wrap all the books together to be shipped out as such. So there are pictures of that. But overall, the room itself, the expedition area, is small. 90 feet was that, including a front section, including offices, so it's not a very big place. And especially when it comes to the timing of the so-called second floor lunchroom encounter, you walk through that building within 10 seconds, diagonally, even less than that. So.
Right. So we're trying to establish that Oswald was on the first floor and not the second floor. So when we get into stuff like this, and I was rereading some parts of your book that you were nice enough to send me, gratis, which I do appreciate. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. You deserve it.
I did put you on the map. I mean, let's be honest. I'm joking. It was your video that put you on the map, because I think that's what drew my attention to you to begin with, to even reach out to you and say, "Hey, man, let's talk." But
Yeah,
back to the
that's
first
such a
floor.
long
Okay,
time
so we
ago
want to
already.
establish that Oswald was on the first floor,
Yeah.
which makes sense if he was eating in the domino room, and then he stepped
Yeah.
outside, behind everybody, and really wasn't noticed.
If you
by anybody
think
else.
about,
Of course, their attention is focused on the parade that's coming.
yeah, well, if you think about, like, what are the observations of others about Oswald? So first of all,
So
we got
who
the
who
instance
was on the
where,
first floor inside at the
sorry,
time? Let's. So Troy West, Eddie Piper, right?
yeah,
Is that it?
Eddie Piper and Troy
Those are the only two
West,
guys that were supposed to be on the first floor,
they were
who
there.
said they were.
And then basically, technically, you can also say this about the people that were standing on the landing of the Texas School Book Depository, of the front steps, because the front steps are
I mean, just
basically, you've got the
inside the
ground
building
level.
on the
You've
first
got the
floor.
you've got the ground level, and if you go up the steps, you are already on the first floor. So there's no real ground floor
Right.
inside the building of the Texas School Book Depository. So the people
you're
that
on
were
the
standing
first
on the
floor.
landing, so that's Joe Molina and Bill Shelley and Bill Frazier and Roy Edward Lewis, they were all on the first floor as well, but be it standing in
But
the doorway
inside
and
the
on
building,
landing.
at the time of the assassination, we just have Troy West and Eddie Piper, right? Inside the building.
Yeah.
And what do they say? Because they were in the best possible position to see Oswald come through the first floor and then step outside, right? Now, was Troy West also black? I know Eddie Piper was.
Yeah.
So Troy West was black as well.
Yes,
Interesting.
and Troy West, if you read his Warren Commission testimony, is somebody who doesn't want to be involved at all. And
Well, that's why I asked the question, because a lot of these black guys, they did not want to help, and I understand why. They didn't want to be involved in any of this shit. You know what I mean?
No,
So
it's a white man's
that's
problem.
the only reason I was clarifying why. If these guys, I didn't see nothing, I don't know nothing, type of thing.
Yeah, that's exactly Troy West. West. Eddie Piper tried to do his best as well, but Eddie Piper basically got dragged in again because he had to confirm that he saw Truly. And then even then he couldn't say, like, well, with the helmeted officer. No, he couldn't say that. So, they tried to make him say it. And then the funny part of that one is basically when they said, well, where's Oswald? And he says, and that's the first time they only made mention of it, because in his affidavit he says, I'm going to go up. But during his Warren Commission testimony, he says going up or out. Never mentioned going out ever before. Some people say, that means nothing. And I'm going, the fact that he says that, and the fact that he was under pressure, and then all of a sudden started saying that too, which of course wasn't part of the plan.
What's amazing too, that a lot of these people didn't even see Marion Baker come into the building.
Exactly. Bill Frazier did not.
Right there,
Joe Molina did not. Joe Molina actually said in his second affidavit taken on the 23rd, he said that Truly didn't even go up. He stayed. He was downstairs.
Right on the first floor.
That basically means like a total kill for any second floor lunchroom encounter. I mean, there are too many pointers from a physical point of view that event never happened. That Oswald actually gave him the idea, and that they then basically massaged it and sexed it up and changed it around and made it look like he met them there while coming from the 6th floor as such.
Yeah, I mean, it kills me, and I think about this often. That had the Dallas police just done one thing differently, this whole story changes. If you have them, because there were several officers, stationed right across the street. Like Joe Smith. You have Marion Baker. I mean, he could have just said, "Hey, yo, I think the shots came from this building. Go around and catch the back entrance. Stand still. Don't let anybody out of the building." And if Marion Baker was on the front and he didn't let anybody in or out, this would be a whole different story, Bart.
You know what? If only they basically checked the bottle that was left on the steps, and that's been photographed about 5 or 6 times by William Allen of the Dallas Times Herald, while people are walking up the stairs and standing on the stairs, and that stupid bottle is still standing there. And I'm going, if you take fingerprints of that bottle, I bet you 10-1 that Oswald's fingerprints are on that.
Yeah. If anybody has never seen the William Allen photographs, I would highly recommend going and checking them out, because there are some really, really good ones in his series. And he took about 50 or 60 photos that we know of, that we have access to today.
Yeah, they've been most helpful, those pictures, especially with recognizing people, the Texas School Book Depository Workers Office and management, and laborers as such. Yeah.
So let's move up to the, let's see, 5th floor, because this is something that's always confused the hell out of me. And I've done several shows about it, and I've tried and tried and tried to figure out what in the Sam hell is going on the 5th floor, because you have the 3 black guys are there, right? And then Charles Bordy also puts himself at the time of the shooting on the 5th floor, but yet he doesn't see them and they don't see him. And I just don't understand how that's possible.
Well,
because from the Warren Commission photos, it looks like there's not a whole lot of shit on the 5th floor. Like, it looks wide open.
It's wide open. So for that, you're right to question that. There's a problem with Jack Doherty, left, right, and center, even with the interview he did afterwards as well. In the early 70s.
Yeah, they try to say, this guy's retarded and he's heartless.
Yeah, but it's like it's either it's totally true, or it's, on the other hand, he's a really smart cookie and he really knows the ways to deceive everyone. And I find it really funny that he's regarded as dumb and retarded, but at the same time, he had the responsibility to check out fire sprinkling gear and so forth first thing in the morning.
Open and close the building.
When Joe Molina opened the door up, he was going in and did all the bits and bobs that needed to be done to have the building going, basically. So that when the rest of the employees came an hour later, everything was ready to go.
Yeah, because he's one of the guys that said, he saw Oswald come to work that morning and he did not have anything in his hands.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is interesting.
That's more than interesting, because that basically nullifies the bag with the rifle in it. The bag that was cupped in his hand. I tried it with the rifle.
Yeah, it was tucked in his armpit.
Ian Griggs had a Mannlicher Carcano. We took it apart, and I had the Woodstock, and I tried to do it, put it underneath, cup it underneath in my hand and underneath my armpit, and it's impossible. Now, I'm a tall fella. I'm 6'5". Okay, so it should have been easier with me than it would be somebody who's 5'9". So, I just the second he said that, I was like, well, there's no rifle in there, And if he cupped it, then it must have been curtain rods, right? There was a rifle in there, but but that whole thing is a non-issue for me anyway, because in the book, by putting it into chronological order, I've come to the conclusion, and that was one of the last conclusions that I actually did, is that after Oswald's press conference, he is being processed, so to speak, because nobody had done that yet. So they take his pictures, And they take another set of palm prints and fingerprints, because the palm prints and the fingerprints the ones before have already been given to the FBI. At that time, when Oswald got his mugshot taken, they don't have any fingerprints left or the palm print. So they've got to redo them. And they redo that at about 1:30 in the morning. The Heidel ID, I explained that in fine detail, doesn't really exist. And I mean the Heidel ID as it being a card that was part of his wallet. The next day, there is a card. But on the 22nd, nobody has seen this card. So then comes the fact on top of that, the Heidel order for the rifle wasn't found until about 7 o'clock or 7:30 in the morning on the 23rd, on the Saturday. On the 22nd, there's absolutely zero connection. The fingerprints are smudged on the trigger guard. The palm print was no palm print underneath the barrel until a few days later. Then it was there. The fingerprints and the palm prints were taken away. So at that point, after taking all the things, and the fact that Marina Oswald didn't recognize the rifle either at 8 o'clock, they had nothing to connect him with the rifle at that point when they arraigned him for the murder of the president.
He didn't order a rifle, or he didn't own a rifle, he didn't own a handgun.
Yeah.
Which
is all true.
Because I think, and it was something I didn't realize before reading your book, I saw in there that he actually claimed that the gun was planted on him or thrown at him in the theater or something, but he didn't take any pistol there. Did I get that right?
Yeah, you're breaking up a bit. There are dropouts.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can. But every 5 or 10 seconds, you drop out for a second or two. So it's hard to.
Might be the ice on my balls, making me drop out there and here and there. No, but I was saying, Oswald said that he didn't own a rifle and he didn't own a pistol, and that the pistol was planted on him in the theater, or it was kind of tossed at him or something.
Yeah, that's true. Because he said that to God Rose, that the gun was tossed at him, and George Applin, who was in the Texas Theater when it happened, said the same thing. He said he saw the gun in a police officer's hand, and then all of a sudden it was like being taken away from Oswald as such. It didn't make any sense, and he said they threw the gun at him to make him look.
And like the bullets that were found in his pocket from like the fourth search.
Well, that's even worse. That's worse. Because,
I mean, come on.
Yeah, well, because he was frisked twice, once in the car, and once when he's dropped off at the in the City Hall building on the 3rd floor, and then an hour and a half after, they frisk him again for the 3rd time, and that's when they find a bus ticket and they find the 5 bullets. And I was like, yeah, right. So either those two guys in the beginning, Bentley and Charles Truman Walker, Paul Bentley and Charles Truman Walker, did an absolute shoddy job, which I doubt, or the bullets and the bus ticket are inserted. If that's the case, then the bus ride is a fugazi from the word get-go, which there are many other pointers already for that being total make-believe story. So, and then, of course, the gun has been thrown at him as well. So, I know Oswald was an oddball, and him leaving so quick was also a real dumb move. But at the same time, they could have done it with anyone. But
I mean, this whole thing could have been different if Oswald would have just stayed in the building with everybody else too. This whole story could have gone different ways.
That's what's so suspicious about it. Who goes to the cinema after the president has been murdered? I know he wasn't a social animal. I know he wasn't a social animal, but he didn't even bother to call home, to call his wife and say, "Did you hear what happened? It was right in front of our building," etc., etc. No, I'm going to go watch a couple of more movies, war movies. Was it War is Hell and the other one? I was like,
Private
Yeah,
battle.
yeah. So it doesn't make.
Oh.
It just goes against common sense to do that.
Was Marina home, or Marina and Ruth home? Were they home at the time? Because I thought they had been out.
Yes. Yeah, they had
He
been
may
out
have
in the
tried to
morning.
call and nobody was
They
there.
were out in the morning, and then they were back, and they were there. The police was
They
there
were
pretty
there.
damn quick to go
Well, that's
search for
another
your
thing
stuff
I've been
between
looking
2 and
into.
3 o'clock. I
How these
think
police,
they're already there
how these
because
police got to the rooming house on Beckley so quick. Because
yeah,
according to Erling
that too.
Roberts, and according to Mrs. A.C. Johnson, the cops and the FBI were there like 1:30, which is before he's even arrested at the theater.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's impossible.
yeah.
And even
Yeah, I mean,
even if, I mean, did Oswald tell them? Well, according to the interrogation notes, anyway. But did Oswald tell them at any time there on Friday after he was arrested that he was staying in North Beckley to get police there that quickly? Because I know they didn't have a search warrant until like 4 or 5 o'clock.
exactly. But you know what? Beckley is really mysterious, and there are some serious gaps in them. And I never really, I mean, I've only read a few bits. The only thing that I just didn't buy was the gun being there, because that room, which is room 0, which is right near the communal room, a really thin door. The door was never locked. Kids were playing there. The landladies were nosy, so they would go through
Right.
things. And they said as well, there's no way there would have been a gun in that room. We would have known. That's what they said. They completely disowned that. Yeah.
Didn't they say they found the holster for this gun later in Beckley?
I'm sorry, I didn't get that. You broke up again.
Oh, the holster. Didn't they say
Yeah.
they found the holster for this gun
Bill
at the
Alexander found it.
rooming
It
house?
was hanging off the doorknob, and they just went, no way.
Oh, that's
So
horseshit.
bent. It's so bent. It's not funny anymore.
I'll just leave this hanging here. I won't be back. The whole story stinks from top to bottom.
Well, that's
from the time
me, Ed Ledoux and I always said that it's like, is there actually anything besides Kennedy getting shot and Connolly wounded? Is there anything that isn't true, or that's actually true? Because there's problems.
Is it
with
because it
everything.
was a fucking setup, or is it because the investigation was so fucked up and shoddy from the beginning? Like, is it that, or is it case of somebody setting this guy up? That's the thing. Because if you think it's okay, well, they're setting this guy up, then there's going to be a lot of fingers in that pie
that agrees with you. Part of mine that will agree with you, but I think also there's a massive part of like senior people set things in motion, and everybody else follows orders, and that's that.
Yeah, that's why certain people were at all and all that jazz, right?
Well, if you look at J. Edgar Hoover, for instance, he was calling RFK at 3 o'clock already. Oh, I think Oswald did it. I mean, he hasn't even been interrogated by the FBI because they don't waltz in until 3:15. But at 3 o'clock, he already sends a document out saying, yeah, he did it. And then an hour and a bit later.
Hosty by then.
Sorry?
I was just wondering if Hoover had even talked to Hosty before he sent that letter.
No, because Hosty didn't arrive until 2:45-ish, and then at 3:15, him and James Bookout walked into the interrogation room. And at 4 o'clock, you've got Clyde Tolson writing a memo about Katzenbach, who wants to ascribe guilt to Oswald at that point,
Yeah,
and
it's
that
a lone
was
assassin.
4 o'clock Dallas time, and it was like, wow, they haven't even walked out the room yet because Oswald came out between 4 and 4:05 to be taken down for the lineup with Helen Markham, and just before that, he gets frisked by Boyd and Sims as such.
Yeah.
They
missed
that whole thing. Yeah, I mean, what happens in that first interrogation is the most pivotal interrogation because they destroy everything. They all are complicit. And then afterwards, when the Secret Service comes in, they're all busy destroying Oswald.
Yeah.
It's terrible what happened to that guy, but that's how it went. They really destroyed his alibi in that first interrogation. If you look at the notes, the paperwork, and so forth, and then the 180 that James Bookout does, because the notes, the handwritten notes during that interrogation, James Hosty is the only one who took notes, and during that particular interrogation. Now there are Fritz notes as well, but the Fritz notes aren't contemporary. Yeah, they were done after the fact. Yeah, that's correct. Whereas Hosty took notes with his flip book, the ones that you have inside your inside jacket pocket to take out and to take notes. That's where he took bits down. And then after that, after the interrogation, he went into the other room, Walter Potts's room, and basically started writing down the phone numbers and so forth that were in his address book, and started writing down the evidence as such. There's no Heidel ID mentioned whatsoever. I mean, anyone with an iota of common sense, if there is a second ID with a different name, you'd think that of all the 4 interrogations that happened that on the 22nd, right, from the afternoon until late in the evening, somebody would have mentioned, yo, man, what's going on? What's his name? But it doesn't get brought up until 11:30 the next morning at the end of the 5th interrogation. It's a complete joke. So, but that's how it went.
Did you get a chance to check out the that special that's been on Nat Geo called JFK One Day in America?
I saw one that was yesterday that was on Channel 4. I wasn't too enamored about it.
Yeah, I was watching it, and there's a lot of footage that I don't ever remember seeing, and then they actually
is this the Rob Reiner
interviewed. I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay.
It's just called One Day in America. It's a 3-part little mini series. It's on Nat Geo or Disney. It's on Disney Plus.
24 Hours to Change the World. That's what I've watched. I haven't seen that. Then.
So yeah, you need to check that out because it has an interview with a guy. When Oswald's at the midnight press conference and the guy said, "Oh no, you have been charged." What? It has an interview with that guy who was.
Oh really?
Yeah, I forget his name, but he's in the show, and it has his story. It's like I said, there's a lot of stuff about the reporters and photographers and stuff that were there in the police headquarters. At the time that Oswald was in there, and it has a whole bunch of B-roll footage and all kinds of stuff that I've never seen before.
Oh, that's good.
And he was like, "Yeah," he said, they were asking Oswald these questions, and somebody asked him if he killed the president, and he said no. And I had just been talking to a buddy of mine who was on the force, and they said they were drawing up the paperwork to charge him, and I just said, "Well, no, you have been charged." And he said, "Now I saw the look on Oswald's face just immediately change, and it's like all the blood drained out of his body, and
I've got a more simplistic version for that one. Basically, it starts with an F. I am F.
Yeah.
Oh God, that look, and you just see.
Yeah, it doesn't really have a theory or try to prove anything. It's kind of more of like it takes you through the timeline of events of that weekend, and there's just a whole lot
But
of
it's
stuff
the
in there I'd never seen before.
it's the right way. It's the right way to do that. If just instead of getting emotional and opinionate, because
Right.
when I did the editing of my book, there was about between 6 and 10 instances where I just added commentary on top. And I just went, you know what? I don't need this, because anyone with half a brain will understand the evidence. And when they read the evidence, they'll go, never had a chance to get out of that. And just by
Right.
listing it, and just trying to be as thorough as possible with the evidence. And I was like, I don't need to add the info on it. And my girlfriend said the same thing, and so said Ellen Dale. Yeah, we don't need it. Did you let the evidence do the talking? And I'm going, oh, yeah, well, fine. Then we'll stick to that. Because, it's one of my pet hates, authors with opinions. Just going, well, I believe, and I think that. Shut up. Just shut up. If you don't have the evidence, you don't have to use. If you have the evidence, you don't have to use that. It was right there, right in front of you, black and white.
Right.
Boom.
And that's what's great about your book. I mean, it's chock full of. There's no overt bullshit commentary to go along with it. This is what we have. This is what happened, and you put it together yourself, and you'll understand, why it's important. So I think you did a great job at that.
Thank you. And the thing is also, the nicest is that, although my girlfriend is probably a bit biased, but my brother as well, but he just went, and I had a few friends, and they all went, I understand it. It's not a problem. It's not, the names are, and I'm going, it's like being a teacher standing in front of a class, and you've got to know 30 students' names. Well, this book has probably up to 100 people's names. So,
right.
And put that into perspective. That's quite a daunting and challenging task. But other than that, basically, by just put it in a chronology, in a way, like, especially also with inside the Texas School Book Depository, I just thought, well, I'll just do it floor by floor. That's the best way of doing it. But then with the interrogations, it was just pivotal to time it as much as possible. And this is something that I didn't do until 4 years ago. I've been working on that paper 5 or 6 years. And I worked on it for a year and a half before I went, no, that's rubbish. I'm going to toss it all up in the air and do it all over again. Because I had it done per individual. And when I managed to pinpoint some video footage at what time it was happening, I was like, right, that's interesting. And then I found like 3 different copies of the same footage, as such. So because there are several cameramen in that corridor. And I was like, oh, that's good. That's interesting. So you get different angle and who's walking with whom and this, that, the work that you're doing is no different than police work. You're just going through it and you just, where is he going? Where's this guy standing? And okay. And, and we go, okay, well, this is not that too important, blah, blah, blah. But, the cameras and so forth. I found that out with to my benefit for the fingerprints, because when the Dog and Pony show happens at 9:00 in the evening and the boys of Identification Bureau are coming out, and there's 3 of them, and they all take turns into showing. One does a tin with paraffin in it and bits in it, an empty tin no less, and one with the palm prints and one with the fingerprints, and you just see them just putting all these things on display. Now the funny thing is with the fingerprints is that he stands in front of the press guys, and in that little bit of footage that I got hold of, thanks to Dennis Morissette, he basically takes one card from behind the other and shows a card with his right hand to a group of photographers and cameramen to his right, which I can't see. But then on the left, he had the card that I knew about. And I never knew there were 2 cards. And all of a sudden, when he did that, like a magic trick, all of a sudden, there's a second card. And I was like, oh, my God, there's a second card. And then, as luck would have it, Malcolm had a newspaper article with the picture that shot the set that was in the right hand of the police officer who's showing it to that group, of which I couldn't see what it looked like. So it was I was fortunate enough to see both. Now, that whole thing with the fingerprints is a whole story by itself, but the bottom line is just that they disappear, and they disappear into the archives of the FBI. And it takes, some low-grade paid guy in the archives to actually find them by accident at the time of the HSCA as such. But just the studying of the photos and all that. Yeah, I mean, I do get a kick out of that. It's great fun, and but also it can be quite monotonous. But with the fingerprints, that paid off, and it made me realize like what those cards, the originals, are nowhere to be found. Nowhere, absolutely nowhere. Yeah. The originals of the ones that they took in the middle of the night after Oswald's press conference, they're all available. You can get them at the Texas University of North Texas. You can get them there. Right. They're pristine, beautiful, fresh copies and fresh prints on them. But the first 2-3 sets, photocopies, all of them. There's nothing in this case that's actually straightforward and just goes. But yeah, I mean, if you think about it, his APB could be anyone, 30 years old. Really? Oswald, 30 years old? Wearing a gun, having a gun?
5'10", 150 pounds, brown hair.
Yeah,
I mean, slender.
Yeah,
come on.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So that, and then also, who gave that description? Nobody knows to this day. I mean, they think like it's Sawyer, and he based it on, what's his name? The plumber's, Brennan's description. And how on earth could Brennan give that description? Because A, he's not seen looking up at all. And B, how would he guess that person's height and age when he's standing behind dirty glass? And there's a bit that cuts off the legs, so you don't know how far he's basically, how high up that bit of masonry is actually, and concrete is basically bricking, is actually cutting off his length. Unless you stand on the floor yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, unless you've been in that building and you realize that the fucking windows are like foot off the floor.
Yeah.
Normally windows aren't a foot off the floor. So unless you knew that,
floor, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's funny because I saw like the HSCA interview of Howard Brennan, and he pretty much told them to go fuck themselves.
Yeah.
But
Brennan didn't recognize it.
He said, I'm not talking about nothing. And I'm not flying to Washington.
Yeah. I mean, when Brennan was brought in by Sorrells in the evening, and there's no evidence of any of this lineup besides a little index card. That is all there is. But he basically said, didn't recognize him. Well,
didn't they say that vague description could have come from Ronald Fisher too, and not Brendan?
Don't
know. I see so many things; it just all swirls together in my brain.
Yeah. It's just one big giant melting pot, and you just go. Fuck off.
No. Yeah. One other thing I wanted to get into you with, Bart, is contemporary interviews with some of those outside witnesses, and like Roy Lewis, Frazier, Marina. I think it's obviously Frazier is standing right beside Prayer Man in that one. Is it the Darnell clip where we see Frazier on the stairs just standing there, and then you see Prayer Man right beside him?
Yeah. And they look at each other. So, they interact with each other. And yet he says, I don't know who that is.
Yeah, and Frazier says, I don't know who that is, but it's 100% not Oswald.
Yeah. Well, 10 years ago, he didn't say that. 10 years ago, he just went, I don't know who that is, and I can't see who that is. The photo, blah, 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 this, that, and the other. And he never made mention of it. And, of course, Prayer Man started to get more traction, especially in the last 5-6 years. And then, of course, people keep asking him. Roy Lewis is better at this. I'll say Ed Ledoux interviewed him. It was Larry Rivera who did an interview with him. and I absolutely hated the quality of it. And there was cuts in it, and there was like you could hear the
Even
whole
like the
cafe.
potato chips and the silverware and the
The
conversations
quality
going
of the
on behind.
recording was diabolical. I was absolutely, oh my God, dude, stop this.
Yeah.
And and then I said to Ed while we were talking, I said, dude, look, you got to get hold of him. Let's talk to him. Well, Ed talked to him about 4 or 5 times. Twice the recording didn't work. So he managed to, yeah, that was really bad. And so he talked to him again. And every time he's really good in saying, I don't know who that is. I don't know who stood in front of me. You know what? He does the Troy West thing a little bit more eloquently, but better. I mean, I just don't buy it. You know, I mean, those guys, they worked together. They stood there together. They said there wasn't a stranger. And that's another thing. If you just go through the names, how many laborers are there? White boys. So there was Buell Frazier, there's Billy Lovelady, Lee Oswald, and Jack Doherty. And that's it. Yeah. So you got 4 guys who are basically candidates for this. Well, Doherty is on the 5th floor, as he says.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Frazier's too tall and skinny, and he's already in the picture.
Frazier is noticed in the same standing. Lovelady, same thing, is also seen standing next to Oswald. So you only have Oswald as a candidate. And if you then look at it and go, all right, and then Marina says, no, it's him, it's Lee. And we didn't, when Ed called her, she volunteered it. She didn't even say like after a question. She just went, oh, it's Lee. And I was like, oh, really? We didn't even ask her. And, you know, so, and then you've got the reports of the first interrogation where he says that he went outside to watch the parade, the presidential parade. And you've got the Fritz notes outside with Bill Shelley. So you start looking at all these things and you go, okay. So that plus just, it is no stranger because they were asked as well under oath. And they didn't see a stranger. The only one that saw a stranger was Denny Archer Garcia, which was about 45 minutes before the motorcade came past. There was an elderly man that wanted to use the washroom and was in a car with 3 elderly ladies, and he saw them drive away underneath the Stemmons Freeway. So it's really difficult. You know what? I understand why these people say, oh, that's Oswald. Number one, why'd you keep your mouth shut over 60 years? Why? Well, I was scared, or I was this, or I was that. Why have, I don't know how many TV trucks in your front lawn, on your front lawn, and starting asking you questions? Especially in times like this, it's not as simple anymore with just a truck and a cameraman. Now we talk everyone with an iPhone is a blogger or an influencer or God knows whatever. So you ask yourself, really, do they need that? Do the kids need that when they go to school? Well, they're probably now too old to go to school, but the workplace and so forth. So they just say, you know what? I'm just going to keep stum. I'm not going to bring him back. No one's going to bring him back. Yeah.
Nothing's going to change. Just leave it lie.
Yeah. Yeah. He's dead. He's been dead for years. So let's just forget about it. Blah, blah, blah. So the problem with Frazier.
If you come out now, if with Frazier, even Lewis. So, I mean, if you were to come out now and say, look.
Yeah. The headache.
Lee Oswald is standing right there on the fucking steps next to me. He was caught on the film. It was him. I was scared at the time, but I'm telling you right now, that's him 100%. He was not on the 6th floor shooting. What's going to happen to them? Either they're not going to be believed, they're going to be called a liar.
Demented.
They're going to say, why now?
Crazy.
Why come out with this now? You're looking for
money.
Look
at this Landis story. What
God,
change did that make? Yeah, besides selling a few copies of, what was it, Esquire or was it GQ, of the magazine that it was in?
Esquire.
And by Esquire. So you've got they're selling a few extra copies for the people that are actually interested. Does anyone else give a hoot? Nobody does. Nobody cares.
Even though if what he's saying is true, it changes the entire fucking at least established narrative.
Well, I always say the deck of cards falls. The card house
Well, yeah,
that you build, that will just falls. That just drops.
the magic bullet
And
theory is
then they'll
bullshit.
go, well, do we
It-
need to reinvestigate? No, you don't. You know, everyone's practically dead unless you want to drag Elmer Boyd, 94, 95 years old, in front of a judge under oath. Huh, I didn't know. Blah, blah, blah. Oh, I don't recall 45 times. I don't recall. He just does a Trump. You know, so what's the...
He does a
There's no
Lavelle.
point. Yeah,
I don't
Lavelle as
recall.
well. Yeah. Yeah, Lavelle and what's his name?
But then 50 years later, you remember everything.
Yeah.
How the fuck does that make any sense?
Yeah, I know. Lavelle is quite questionable as a character, and so is Richard Sims. Richard Sims' testimony is just is an abomination because he just, I have no recollection of that. I don't know. And I'm like, dude, you're in that room. He was interrogated as such.
I know.
You
It's
know?
so frustrating.
And Elmer Boyd does it really well as well during his Sixth Floor Museum interview. When, what was he like during the interrogations? He just grimaces and goes, you know. And I'm like, what? That's it? You're not going to tell him anything? So you just, you know what, to his dying day, he's not going to say, listen, he said he was innocent and that he had nothing to do with it. Countless times, asked for a lawyer. I don't know how many times. I mean, Oswald didn't get a phone call until 24 hours, almost 24 hours after his arrest. 24 hours. So what did Will Fritz say? We were busy taking his fingerprints and pictures and stuff like that and interior. Of course you were. Yeah.
Yeah.
So had he had a lawyer, it would have gone completely different. If there had been a lawyer at that first interrogation right there from the word get-go, you know what, they wouldn't have gotten nowhere. And that's why they basically kept a lawyer away from as long as possible. When the ACLU guys came in at 11 o'clock in the evening or 11:30 and tried to get hold of him, they were also given the runaround.
And I think Oswald was smart enough to where he wouldn't have given him shit in that first interrogation. You know, he'd been like,
No,
I
he
want
only answered the questions that he wanted to answer in that sense that,
Right.
He was negative about the Mexico City thing. Well, I don't believe he was there, but whether he was there or not, the whole thing, the questioning of it,
I mean, before
anything
the
like
FBI got there, before Hosty and Bookout got there, when he was just with Fritz, and I don't think he gave Fritz a goddamn thing. But when the FBI showed up, I think he was like, "Oh, okay. Well, they know this about me, they know that, or they, know, they're on my side."
Fritz,
whatever he was thinking.
Will Fritz, the most skilled interrogator, blah blah blah. Yeah. Well, he couldn't beat him up because there's too many people there. So that's what they did, man. So they beat you up. But it's not just Dallas. I mean, there's a lot of people think, well, you're just saying bad stuff about Dallas. And I'm going, no. Could have happened in New York, Chicago, L.A., London. Doesn't matter. The police just did matters like that with an interrogation. They just beat you for it.
Before you had civil rights and shit, I mean, this is the way it went down.
Exactly.
If you didn't come out with it, they thought they had the right guy. They were going to beat it out of you one way or the other.
Yeah.
And it was just the accepted way of how things go back then.
Yeah, and that's the problem. I mean, Oswald had, he was a communist defector, right?
Yeah.
He was a former Marine, dishonorable discharge, Tommy defector, in the same building from where they thought the shots were fired, then close in the vicinity of where the police officers killed.
Mm-hmm.
He's brought in as a cop killer. He's not brought in as a cop, the killer of the president. He's brought in as a cop killer. So he's branded there and then already. Oh, that's a cop killer. Oh, well, yeah, that's Oswald. He works with that. Yeah, he just killed a cop. Oh. Yeah, I've only known him a little bit, sporadically. He didn't talk to anyone. Yeah? Distancing. Everyone's distancing. Yep. Look at Joe Molina. Look at Bill Frazier.
Yeah.
I mean,
I would have done the same thing. Hey.
Molina used to be a chairman of the GI Forum, which was only guys from Hispanic descent who fought in the Second World War and wanted equal burial rights. compared to white people. Well, I thought that's not a bad request. That's not an unreasonable request. But it made them look like a bunch of commies, and they got infiltrated by commies. And so the second they knew about that on Molina, they tossed his house in the middle of the night and told him to come around the next day, etc., etc. And God knows forbid what they told him there and then, because on top of that, Chief Curry basically talked shit on him, and he lost his job a month later due to automation. But his co-worker, Otis Williams, was older than he was, and Otis Williams could stay. Yet he got 3 months pay, 3 months pension pay or whatever, leave pay, and another 2 weeks as a Christmas bonus. And it was like, get out. And he wanted to sue Curry as well for $100,000 to basically for blackening him. Because what happened was that the second day the name came out and worked at the Texas School Book Depository, customers started calling up and say, hey, I'm not ordering books from anyone that does commie literature and commie this and commie that and blah, blah, blah. You know, these people,
he's probably some kind of Cuban, pro Castro Cuban or
exactly.
something.
These people are marked. So you've got him being Hispanic. The black people were marked. I mean, Eddie Piper had a DUI from about 12 years prior. Okay, 12 years. I bet he still had that brand on his forehead from that DUI because they went after him so hard.
And Gibbons got caught with a joint, So.
Yeah. No, was it 2 ounces of 2 ounces of weed? And he changed his testimony for money. That's what Ganaway said. I was like, what? You know what? That's one thing I'd really love to. I'd love to basically read more about what it was like in those days. There's not many around anymore that basically know what it was like in those days. I mean, the robbery and homicide people, the Will Fritz gang, were seen as the elite. They all wore their own hat, and they were all like regarded as elite people, and they could do whatever they liked. Fritz was in his job, so not just DPD, but being captain of robbery and homicide for decades. And the second he was removed and replaced by somebody else, whose name eludes me, he pretty much quit. He went early. He retired. That was it. He was like, forget about it. I'm not doing this. He lost his power base as such. That's what.
Let me ask you a question about Fritz. It was after. I think it was after he left the TSBD.
Yeah.
But before he went back to the police headquarters,
he went to see Bill Decker.
To see Bill Decker. Yeah. And he went to see him. What do you think the conversation was?
You're asking me to speculate. Oh,
yes.
Let's just throw that in then for this time. Whoever was the suspect, he's going down, and he ain't coming out of it. That's basically it. That's what I think. I mean, Boyle and Sims were quiet about it as well. Very quiet about it. Oh, no, I was standing outside. I'm thinking, no, you weren't. You're not standing outside.
Fritz wouldn't have told him on the way back to the headquarters. I mean, it's odd to be summoned by the fucking sheriff, I'm assuming, if you're the head of the city homicide bureau, to be summoned by the sheriff and you go talk to him and you don't tell your buddies what the hell just happened on the way back. You know what I mean?
It's secretive enough. Fritz? It's secretive enough because they could have done it over the phone, just like
right.
And they didn't. And it's that bit where they just went nah, and I'll just go nah. Sorry, mate, but that's just off the hook. That's not right.
Yeah. Something's definitely smelly there. Well, what's next for Bart Kamp? I mean, you got the book done. I said, what's next for Bart Kamp? You got the book done. You got your Lancer presentation done. You just did
I've got a
DP
Lancer presentation.
Marathon
that I'm
talk
put together tomorrow. And I have already a few bits that I can use for updates, but I'm not going to do that yet. Instead, I started to look into books 2 and 3. Even though it's not that obvious, but Prayer Man is based on photography. And as a photographer, I've always had this as a hobby, and I've always liked it, looking at the media and so forth. There's a lot of dumb remarks about the media and what people imagine to see, what they think they see. Looking at a 5th generation copy and go, yeah, it's right there. Yeah, sure. There's a serious lack of quality work on the photography and the films. And
When some of the books that were done about it have been out of print for 40 years, 30
yeah,
years.
yeah.
And they're very hard to get.
I like
very
Richard
incomplete.
Trask's book. That's very detailed. I'm not a fan
John
of the
Woods the third.
Groden books. Sorry?
John Woods the third.
Yeah, I've got his big
hard to
folder as well, which is really, really detailed. And then there's, of course, Photographic Whitewash by Weisberg. That's a decent book as well. Bit hard to read and plow through, but they're all good. But the reason why I'm actually starting to work on the photography parts, more aimed at the photography part, is because I've got a lot of documentation from the Blunt archives that I've kept behind that is rare. Some of it is so rare that there's no trace of it online whatsoever. You'd have to go to the archives for that to get it. And then I don't know if it's available still or not.
Good luck finding it.
That's another thing I found out by talking to Malcolm.
Malcolm, you don't even know what the hell you're looking for, I mean,
well, you need to have the RIF number. So sometimes I just have the RIF sheet. Sometimes I have the entire document and I check it. And there's no mention of that RIF number, not even in the Federal Register. So in the end, all you get is like a calculation, an end calculation. Because for those that don't know, a RIF number is a 13-digit number on a document. I think it's called Record Identification Form, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, Joe Bax is very familiar with wanting RIF numbers on documents that I talk about. I don't
3 numbers dash 5 numbers dash 5 numbers. So the first 3 numbers actually give away what the agency is. So like Central Intelligence Agency is 104, FBI is 124. You got NARA, you got the DOJ, et cetera, et cetera. So I started checking these RIF numbers and then found out that a lot of Malcolm's collection is not available online. Whether that's because they've been pulled, whether that's because they haven't digitized the older copies that were actually freed up in the late 90s after the ARB and in the early noughties, or that they just disappear. Yeah, I think the fact that they haven't digitized them. So, but also there's been instances of reclassification as well. I've found about 3 or 4 documents in Malcolm's collection that have been completely redacted and wiped, whereas the full-on original, as it was, is just in the collection. So, I mean, that's a really rare case. And I said to Malcolm, I'll tell you why that is. I said, because these people that do that have no affinity with the case. And they're basically overzealous, and they just go back in and when they went back in, they just got rid of that. I mean, that's my theory. So with the photography, Malcolm did some things that are really interesting, and I'm just going to pick up from that. Don't forget, Malcolm did these things in the late 90s, 25 years ago. One of them is the Minox camera.
Oh, yeah.
One of them is, and this is really a labyrinth, a maze, are the evidence photos. So, in a nutshell, Bill Alexander decides to have all the evidence photographed before it goes out to the FBI. You see, the FBI and the Dallas police, they weren't really close friends. And with that, I'll just I express myself in a
I don't think
minimalistic
they
way.
liked being told what to do by the FBI.
Yeah,
you know.
nobody did. Yeah, no. So basically, there's a set of photos, and they're taken with a Recordac camera. And this is a camera that's just on a board with a bar where basically the camera is mounted on, and it's idiot proof. It's just like load of film, and you just transport the film and take and click. You don't have to do anything about exposure this, exposure that, or diagram, and etc. Shutter speeds. No, it's all like, one click does it all. And when the FBI takes the films and then comes back, there's a lot missing. There are like more than 50 frames that are absolutely gone, disappeared. And this, of course, is all. And you know what? The Minox is part of that as well, because Gus Rose finds it, and the FBI go to him 3 times to make him change his testimony, and he refuses to do so. He refuses to say that it's a light meter. And there's a photo of the Dallas police evidence that shows the Minox camera in it. So
it's clearly the camera.
Yeah. So, and it was just like, right. So that's a huge issue. I'm going to do something on Nick's. I'm going to do something on the autopsy photos. Now, the only thing about the autopsy photos is that whether it's worth a whole book or a large chapter, that just depends. I'm going to do something on the limo and the crack in the windscreen. The thing at the backyard photos, the thing is that I've got good quality material, images. So whoever is going to publish my book will have to be able to do photography well from a reproduction side when it comes to the paper.
Well, if you need anything about the John T. Martin film, Bart, I'm your guy. Okay. I know every fucking thing possible about it.
Oh yeah, I was trying to see that actually.
I was trying to tell somebody, so we cut that segment down into 15 minutes, and the film itself is just part of the story, right? And to try to get I could do an hour long show just about how Weisberg and Schoner met Martin at the University of Minnesota and their interactions. I mean, that's easy peasy. The bitch of it is the Sixth Floor Museum doesn't have the original film.
Really?
Right. The date code on their film is 1977, which means somebody at the HSCA copied the film and gave Martin back a copy and kept the original. Now, the original is not in NARA at all. So somebody on the photography panel kept the original film. So,
well, you can find that out. It's really simple. I can say that now because 3 weeks ago, I came across a bunch of signing in sheets and sign out sheets for the HSCA. So if there's a specific thing that you want to take with you, you have to sign for it. So there are sheets for the Martin film and the Zapruder film and the Nix film and so forth. They need to be fun.
Interesting to know because there was only so many copies of the film made. Like, okay, he gave the FBI a copy in December after the assassination. They returned it a month later, and he felt that it was edited, by the FBI before it was given back to him.
Right.
And then he voluntarily sent a copy to Jim Garrison when he heard about the Garrison investigation going on. He sent a copy down there in 1967. Now, Garrison didn't see any value in the film. Didn't really mess with it. Didn't send it back to him. Nothing. And then in '68,
just discarded in a box.
Yeah. In '68, Weisberg and Schoner meet this guy by happenstance at the University of Minnesota at a talk they were giving. And they got 2 copies of the film from Martin, one for Schoner, one for Weisberg. And then Weisberg left Minnesota and was actually going straight to New Orleans. So when he got to New Orleans, he found Garrison's copy of the Martin film and was, inspecting it and feeling it for splices and everything. He didn't feel any. But those are the only copies that really existed, and in trying to track a pre sixth floor version of this film, I contacted Grodin, who said that he got his copy, he thinks, from Weisberg in the early 70s, which is possible because I contacted Ogilvy at the Weisberg archives, and I asked him point blank. I was like, is this Martin film part of the collection at all?
Yeah. What did he say?
I don't see it online, and he said, no, it's not part of the online collection. And so I asked him again. I said, well, look, is it sitting on a shelf in a dusty bin somewhere at Hood College in the basement? Is this possible? And he said, look, he said, everything, we've gone through everything. It is not there. It would have been cataloged if it was. He said, the problem is when they picked all this shit up from Weisberg's house, apparently it was left in like a carport. And a lot of things were damaged due to weather before it got there. And some of his family took some things before they got there to it as well. So, he said everything we got is cataloged online. So they don't have a copy of the Weisberg Martin film. So it is possible that Grodin got his copy from Weisberg in the early 70s. So I asked Grodin, well, can we get a copy of your film? We'll pay to digitize it.
Yeah.
He can't find it. So I'm like, damn it. Because the sixth floor copy of the film, the one that's date marked 1977, is so dark compared to screenshots or slides, if you will, that were made for Weisberg at the time of the Garrison investigation, because they were trying to blow up the Oswald portion of the film to try to see, if they could see any familiar faces in the crowd and see if they could see his accomplice, this and that. But, the quality there is so much better than whatever the hell the sixth floor has. I mean, you can tell parts of the film are cropped and darkened, like really badly.
Yeah.
So we were trying to find, a pre-90s, if you will, or even 80s version of the film, and we couldn't find it. We talked to Schoner. He said he still had his copy of the film and the blow-ups. They've been socked away somewhere for 50 years, and we've had him look for them. He can't find them. We're just at kind of a dead end with all that. But unless, because I know Kenneth Zediker is good friends with Grodin, and Grodin's
he's digitizing things. Yeah.
He's kind of letting them go through all his shit and digitize a lot of stuff. So I've got him on the lookout, and he's thought he found it a couple times. And the one copy was like a 35 millimeter, but it was 1,000 feet of film, and to pay to get that digitized would have been over $1,000. So, but he was able to pull the film out enough to where he could see that the Walker part of the film was not on the reel; it was just the Oswald part. And I was like, all right, no, we're not doing that. So, unless it's the complete film, because
of course
there's part of the Walker part of the film that we think has been taken out as well because of descriptions that were of it, pre sixth floor. Like the hole in the wall of Walker's house is not in the sixth floor version, but it's in previous descriptions of the film from people who had seen it in the past. So little things like that, it's just, you only have an hour and you only have a minute or 2 minutes to try to fit all this information into something. And yeah, I mean, I could probably write a book on the goddamn Martin film just alone. I mean, it's crazy. There's that much information.
Well, that's
So
the
that's the
thing I've
answer.
got to do with the Zapruder film, because that's also part of one of the chapters in the next book. And I'm going, you've got to basically do this in 30 to 50 pages. The whole thing has got to be done. And
Yeah.
that doesn't make it easy at all, because, just
There's so
just
much
putting it all
information.
together, and also because there's so much going on about it.
Well, yeah, even up through the 90s and into now, there's so much with the story of the Zapruder film alone, not even what's in the film, just the story of the film.
Yeah, I hear you. I totally agree. Yeah, I
All right,
just
yeah.
go on.
Oh no, I was just going to wrap it up. If you want to
Okay, yeah,
point
sounds
people
good.
in the right direction to find all your stuff and let them know where they can buy the book and check out your website.
Okay, so the book is called Prayer Man: More Than a Fuzzy Picture. It's available in Kindle and in paperback format on Amazon worldwide. And if you're not a fan of Amazon, you can try Barnes and Noble. They do the printed version. I've got the ebook also out on Google Play, and it's going to be out on Apple as well. But I'm trying to sort that out before the end of this coming week, and so you'll have to deal with those places. My website is prayer-man.com. And there's a lot of articles on there that are quite informative, quite a big read as well. And just I keep everyone posted about things as such. The next book, it's going to be a few years. Anything between 2 to 5 years before I finally.
No rush.
I mean, no, exactly. I'm not in a rush because I want to take a break as well, and I'm still gathering. Right now, I'm just collecting documents, collecting pictures, collecting videos of all the subject matters that I'm working on. So it's something I was doing back in 2015 for when it comes to Prayer Man and everything in front of the Texas School Book Depository and so forth. So, and on top of that, this month, there's documentaries coming out. So I watched the one from Channel 4, which wasn't that great. And the Rob Reiner thing is coming out, and then you've got the autopsy thing coming out as well on Paramount. That's been around for quite a few years.
That Geo that I mentioned is out.
Yeah, what's that called, by the way? Sorry, I forgot the title.
I think it's called JFK: A Day in History, or That Day in History. Oh, One Day in America. Sorry. JFK: One Day in America. You can find it on Disney Plus or Nat Geo, and it's 3 episodes. They're 45 minutes each, and there's a lot of stuff in there that I'd never ever seen before. Like these guys, like in the hallway of the police department. All these news guys are standing around smoking cigarettes. Waiting, just shooting the shit. And
unthinkable now, but most normal thing then.
This guy's like talking into the camera, and the cops trying to push him back out of the way while he's doing a news report, and he's not moving, and the cop keeps tapping his chest, and then finally the cop's like, pushes him back out of the way basically. And it was like kind of right before Oswald comes out of the doorway, and you see all these guys scatter, some squat down, and it's crazy stuff, and a lot of it's been colorized, which is cool. So yeah, I would say everybody check that out. I haven't seen a lot of these other documentaries. I haven't seen the Rob Reiner thing or this JFK thing that's been out on Amazon Prime. But very cool, Bart. I appreciate it as always, stopping by the show. It's always fun and informative.
For having me.
Yeah, well, you're definitely a friend of the show, and your work is much appreciated, and everybody needs to be checking out prayer-man.com and going to buy the damn book, Prayer Man: More Than a Fuzzy Picture. by my buddy Bart Kamp. Bart, thank you again for joining the show.
Thank you, Rob.
And talk
Cheers.
soon, my friend.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. All right, that's it, people. On socials, follow along at the Lone Gunman 7. Make sure you are liking the YouTube page as well, the Lone Gunman Podcast. After Lancer, we're going to be doing the show live with my co-host Joe Borelli for the foreseeable future about every Martin you've ever wanted to ever fucking know about involved in the Kennedy assassination. I think we have 8 months of material, so make sure you're following along in the future on the YouTube channel. Subscribe and hit the little bell to get notified when we go live and drop new episodes. So that's it for this week, people. Peace.
Peace.
From the AP bulletin, Kennedy apparently shot in the head. He fell face down in back seat of his car. Blood was on his head. Mrs. Kennedy cried, "Oh no!"
We don't